Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 6th, 2023 City Council regular meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I would like to have the roll call. I got lost there for a minute.
Mayor Peck,
Present.
Councilmember Hidalgo-Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin. Councilmember McCoy.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Waters.
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is live stream and it can be viewed at the city's YouTube channel. It can also be viewed at longmountpublicmedia.org/watch or on Comcast channels 8 or 880. As a reminder to the public, anyone wishing to speak at first call, public invited to be heard, will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers, and only the names on that list will be invited to speak at first call, public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their names on the list will have the opportunity to speak during final call, public invited to be heard. Anyone wishing to speak on second reading or public hearing items are asked to add their name to the speaker list for each particular item. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and we would like your name and address. We are now at the approval of the May 23rd minutes. May I have a motion?
Second.
So the minutes have been moved for approval by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that carries unanimously. Do we have any agenda revisions for this meeting? No, it doesn't look like we do. No agenda revisions? Okay. And motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas. Councilor Hidalgo-Faring.
So this is actually a request of council to, I'd like to make a motion to use up to 10,000 of our carryover contingency funds to support the Juneteenth event. Do I have a second? And then I'll go into discussion.
I second that.
Okay.
So it's been moved by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring, seconded by myself, to ask council for up to $10,000 out of our council contingency fund to fund Juneteenth celebration. We're open for discussion.
Okay.
Councilor Hidalgo-Faring.
Yeah, my purpose for bringing this forward is, we're looking to promote multiculturalism. That is part of our statement, our belief system. And so in looking back, our Dia de los Muertos and Cinco de Mayo, we've used city funds to fund those, and I know that in one of those cases, it was about 14,000 of city dollars used to pay for that. I can't remember which one it was, but I'd like to put our money where our priorities lie. So in supporting this.
Okay. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Is this just to get the ball rolling on what part of that, just to pay for stage and other things like that, and park rental and all of that? Okay. Okay.
Seeing no other comments, let's vote. That passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Shakita. We're now at the city manager's report. And Harold, we got an email today from David Hornbacher that we had signed a contract for AMI. Can you tell us a little bit about that contract?
Yes, Mayor, Council. Obviously, at the open forum, we had a lot of questions about where we are, the AMI program, and what we're doing. We've actually been doing this work for a number of years, and so I asked David to put some information together for you all, and we can provide some more information, sort of highlighting what I went through, what I'm about to go over. So, back in 2020, we actually started funding the AMI program as part of our LPC budget, and we funded that over a few years. In April of 2021, we actually went out to bid for the AMI meters, and we awarded that contract on January 11th of 2022. At the same time, we went out for meter installation bids, and that bid did. That bid was posted September of 2021 and awarded May 27th of 2022. And we have signed contracts with both the meter company and the installation company. The meter company is Landis & Gear, and the installation company is Aclara. We have installed the communication system for that. That was completed in June of 2023. And in terms of meter delivery, we have almost 50,000 meters that are delivered. As council knows, we started the initial deployment of about 560 meters so we could test the communication system and work through that. We're now moving into what we're calling the walking phase, and that's going to be from today to October 2023. And they're going to be installing another 100 plus meters as we work through, make sure the installation is where we need it to be in the processes there. Then we're going to move to the jog stage, which is going to be October of 2023 through December of 2023. And we're going to hopefully put in an additional 2,500 meters. And then once we get through that, we're actually running in the installation process. So, this process, we have contracts and everything in place, and we're moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you for that report. Do you have any other reports for us?
No more reports,
more?
Mayor, Council.
Okay, thank you. And we are at special reports and presentations. I would like to start off with the Longmont City Sister Cities Association introduction of our youth ambassadors. And Janice Rebon. Janice, would you mind turning on the microphone? No, it has to turn red.
Right? Okay.
There you go.
Thank you, Mayor Pack. And first off, I'd like to thank Mayor Pack and council members Hidalgo Faring and Yarborough for visiting our third sister city this past weekend. I hope it was a worthwhile experience for you. And it's doing a lot to foster better relations for past aggressions. So thank you very much. Tonight, I'm here to introduce all of these young folks that are going to be traveling this summer on behalf of Longmont. And we're going to start with our Japanese delegation. So I'd like to start by introducing the chaperones. We have Courtney Michelle and Francisco Sandoval.
Thank you, Janice. Good evening, Mayor Peck and members of City Council. My name is Courtney Michelle, and I'm the Vice President of Longmont Sister Cities Association. Before our ambassadors introduce themselves, I would like to speak a tiny bit about language. Language is a vital part of every culture. It is the method we use to share ideas, communicate, and language ties us to our culture and therefore our community, globally and locally. Speaking just a little of the language of a travel destination adds a layer of respect and connection not otherwise possible if we only speak our native tongue. All three of our groups have practiced a simple introduction in Japanese, Spanish, and Arapaho. I will help alleviate their nerves a little bit by going first. Watashi no namae wa Courtney desu, although they say Koto ni. Arigato gozaimasu. Me llamo Courtney y mi apodo es Pajarita. Muchas gracias. Dos. Nananana Courtney. Ha-ho. Thank you very much for your continued support of Longmont Sister Cities and our mission to bring the world together one friendship at a time. And now we will introduce our ambassadors to Japan and the other chaperone.
Watashi no nama e wa Quinn desu. Arigatou gozaimasu. My name is Quinn and I go to Naiwa High School.
Watashi no name wa Catherine desu. My name is Catherine and I am a junior at Naiwa High School. Thank you very much.
Watashi no nama e wa Maddie desu. Arigatou gozaimasu. My name is Maddie. I'm a senior at Longmont High School. Thank you very much.
Watashi no namae wa Alexander desu. Arigatou gozaimasu. My name is Alexander and I go to Skyline High School. Thank you very much.
Watashi no nama e wa Manan desu. Hello, my name is Manan. I'm 16 years old and I'm a senior at Naiwa High School. Thank you very much.
Watashi no namae wa Francisco desu. My name is Francisco Sandoval. I'm a chaperone, and I teach at Skyline High School. And then move on to Mexico, right? Yeah. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you very much as well.
Hola, me llamo Rachel. Trabajo para la ciudad de Longmont. My name is Rachel. I work for the city of Longmont, and thank you very much.
Hola, me llamo Sean. Soy un estudiante de Naiwa Colegio. My name is Sean. I'm 16 years old, and I'm a student at Naiwa High School.
Hola, me llamo Harper. Soy estudiante de la escuela de Naiwa High School. I'm Harper. I'm a senior at Naiwa High School.
Hola, me llamo Greta Stotch. Soy un estudiante de Naiwa High School. Muchas gracias. Hi, my name is Greta Stotch. I'm a student at Naiwa High School. Thank you very much.
Me llamo Lara. Soy estudiante en la escuela de Longmont High School. My name is Lara and I'm a student at Longmont High School. Thank you.
Hola, me llamo Kale Hubert. Soy un profesor de inglés a Front Range, en Front Range. Y también un chaperón del grupo de Ciudad Guzmán. Muchísimas gracias. Mucho gusto. Thank you.
And finally, we'll have our Arapaho group who head out for the reservation in about 10 days.
Dos, nananana, Jenny. Ha-ho. Thank you so much. My name is Jenny Diaz-Leon and I am a city employee. I work at the Children, Youth and Families Division.
Dos, nananana, Bridget. Ha-ho. I'm Bridget at Silver Creek High School. I'm a sophomore. Thank you very much.
Dos, nanana, Sayora, ha-ho. I am an incoming sophomore at Silver Creek High School. Thank you.
Dos, nananana, Molly. Ha-ho. I am a junior at Silver Creek High School. Thank you.
Dos, nananana, Paloma. Ha-ho. I'm a junior at Naiwan High School.
Dos, nanana, Haley. Ha-ho. I'm Haley and I'm a sophomore at Silver Creek High School. Thank you very much.
Habe dos neneneno Henry. Ha-ho. I just graduated from Naiwan High School.
Habe dos nanano. I am Ian Ritchie. I am a senior at Longmont High School. Ha-ho. Thank you.
Dos bananano, Karen. Hey ho. I'm a mother of two kids that have done this exchange, and I'm a big believer. They've been to both Mexico and Japan, and it's just a wonderful program. So thank you.
Habe dos mananana Will. Ha-ho. My name is Will Single. I'm a teacher at Skyline High School. Thank you so much.
So we have more students traveling this year than we've ever had, which is really exciting, and we're looking forward to having all our guests from Mexico and the Arapaho will be here jointly in early August, so we look forward to that, as well as our Mexican mayor will be back for a return visit. So we're really excited about getting back to business of having student exchanges. And I would like to ask council if you have any advice or questions for our students.
Councilor Yarbrough.
I just want to say thank you all for signing up and looking forward to this new adventure. Remember, wherever you go, you never know when City Council may be there with you. So be on good behavior, and I'm sure you will. But also remember that you are representing our city. You are representing your family. And so when you are there, think about being the example that you want to be and that you should be, no matter where you go. And I know you're going to be awesome. Just for you choosing this program, you are already awesome. So thank you for coming in today and having the ability and vulnerability of speaking a different language, which is amazing. And I can't wait till you get back to tell us all the adventures that you have gone on. So thank you again.
Councilor Hidalgo-Faring.
So I do have a question for you. When they all return, are you going to be bringing the delegation back to share out their experiences?
So there's no council meeting when our delegations are in town, but we will have several events that you're going to be invited to. So you will have an opportunity to learn about what all the adventures were in the 3 different delegations.
Awesome, very good. Well, and thank you for all for making the commitment to do this. We are all extremely proud of you, as I'm sure your families are as well. And remember, as Councilmember Yarbrough had said, you are representing Longmont, and looking at all your faces and how well you present, we're in good hands. So thank you.
Ditto to what everyone said. The one thing that I have learned, though, with going to the Arapaho reservation is that it's better to spend time listening than it is to talking. So the more you learn about them, the better. So I'm really excited for you. This is something that you will remember for the rest of your lives. And be good delegates for us. Thank you very much. Have a great time, too. Have fun.
Thank you, and can we arrange a photo with council with all of the students?
Sure.
All right, come on.
All in the back. Yes, please. I don't know,
All right, y'all are gonna have to squeeze in.
Shorties in the front, some people get down. Shorties in the front. Tighter, everybody.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be panoramic, guys. Y'all really gotta bring it in.
Come on, tight. More rows.
Okay, I got Sean, I've got
knees,
Sean
young
and Tim,
knees,
so
get down
Will
in the
and
front.
Karen scoot in.
Carry the mayor.
All right.
Okay.
All right, big smiles, big smiles.
Keep smiling. Keep smiling.
Thank you and safe travels, everybody.
It's tricky. It takes a lot of skill to take the photos. It does.
Good luck, everyone.
Sandy, I think we're going to do the proclamation next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So the next thing on our agenda is a proclamation. This is a proclamation designating June 2023 as honoring Juneteenth month in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas Juneteenth, also known as Freedom Day, commemorates the end of slavery in the United States and celebrates the spirit of resilience and determination of Black Americans who have overcome centuries of oppression and discrimination to shape our nation's history and culture. Whereas on June 19, 1865, Union General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, to announce the end of the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, marking a pivotal moment in the fight for freedom and equality for African Americans. Whereas Juneteenth has been recognized as a state holiday in Colorado since 2022, and its observance offers an opportunity to reflect on the ongoing struggle for racial justice and to celebrate the contributions and achievements of the Black community. Whereas the Juneteenth holiday in Colorado is a time to honor the legacy of Black Americans, recognize their significant contributions to our state's history and culture, and acknowledge the ongoing challenges and barriers they face. And in 2023, Boulder County honors the contributions specifically of Black Boulder County residents. Whereas Colorado's Black community has a rich and diverse history, from the pioneers who settled in the state during the 19th century, to the activists who fought for civil rights during the 20th century, to the artists, athletes, and entrepreneurs who continue to make their mark today. Whereas we must continue to work towards creating a more equitable and just society for all Coloradoans, and recognizing the contributions and struggles of the Black community is an essential step towards achieving that goal. Now therefore I, Joan Peck, Mayor, by virtue of the authority vested in me, and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2023 as honoring Juneteenth month in Longmont, and encourage the Longmont community to engage in appropriate celebrations and reflections of Juneteenth. So I'm going to call on Councilor Yarbrough to explain a little bit about what she, yes. That's right.
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, my co-counselors. I just want to say, try not to get emotional, so thank you so much. It's a lot of work. Last year, I put on Juneteenth here in the city, and it was so hard doing it by myself. And I never put on an event in my life like that. And we had around 300 to 500 people to show up. And Longmont High School performed drumline. And as tired as I was almost crawling from that place, from Roosevelt Park. And a young lady came up to me and she said, "Thank you for doing this. I had never experienced this before in Longmont." And so that is what we're doing. We are bringing culture and opportunities in our city to let people know that we can work together and that we are a community and we love one another, even if we're faking it. We love one another. And I want our youth in our city to see that we can work together, even though we have our differences. It's okay. We are beautiful no matter what, and we can have our differences and still work together as a community. And when I saw on Facebook after that, oh, is Juneteenth a real holiday? Did that really happen? When you see those negative remarks, and then I come here today and my co-counselors give me money to help me to make this a really good event, that's my heart, and I appreciate it. Thank you, because you are helping the future of our city to know that we can work together as co-counselors and city and community members and residents of this community. I'm sorry I didn't want to get emotional, but it was hard. But this is my true self. And everybody didn't have to vote on that money, and I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. And it means a lot to our community and to our youth. I'm not going to be doing this forever. Is my 3 minutes up? No. I'm not going to be doing this forever, so we have to teach the youth and the young people to give and express their perspectives and what they want to see in this future, working together and with all different cultures and traditions, because it's not just one different culture. We come from all different backgrounds, you know? So we will be June 17th at 1 o'clock at Roosevelt Park from 1 to 5. We will have a fashion show from the first Black fashion designer that ever worked with Banana Republic. He did an awesome job last year. We'll have food vendors. We're gonna have double dutch for kids. I will not be doing it. So it will be an amazing opportunity. We will have a band, we're gonna have dancing, we're gonna have drumming. Unfortunately, our high schools weren't able to do it this year, but next year, hopefully, they will be. And then, the awesome thing, you all, we are bridging gaps with CU. We know there are a lot of professors that live in the city of Longmont. We know there are some students that live here in the city of Longmont. I contacted CU and said, hey, you have a Center for African and African American Studies. What are your students doing? What are your professors doing that live here in our city? And Coach Prime, I need you to show up. I need you to be there. You are a Longmonster now. I almost forgot. Coach Prime, I need you. Anyway, so CU, I know my 3 minutes are up. CU have paid for the venue of Longmont Theater. At 7 p.m., we're going to have a comedian. We're going to have the singing group Reminders. We're going to have Dr. Rebecca from CU speaking in a spoken word. We're going to have the City Council Tim Barnes from Lafayette to come in and speak. And we're going to bridge some gaps. We're going to create some bridges with CU, and hopefully they'll start putting more into the city of Longmont. Let's hope they come downtown and have dinner before the event. So I want to let you all know you can go to the afternoon event with your kids and family, and then if you're not able to make it, come at 7 p.m. at the Longmont Theater. If you've never been there, come try it out because it's a beautiful venue. Try our downtown out. Tickets are $35. Go on longmonttheater.com. And I just want to say thank you again for my co-counselors. I really appreciate you, and you really touch my heart. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything you all say, but thank you for working with me, and I'm very proud to be city council. Thank you.
And we're proud of you too. So let's take a picture. The next presentation that we have is going to be the regional minimum wage presentation. I'll turn it over to Assistant City Manager Sandy Cedar.
Thank you, Mayor. This time it's my turn. So this item is on your agenda because City Council made a motion to hear from speakers around regional minimum wage presentations. So just for context, in 2019, the state legislature passed HB 191210, which gave municipalities the right to set their own minimum wage for employees in the city. The current minimum wage in Colorado is $13.65 an hour. A minimum wage established by the government is subject to several limitations that you'll see in your council packet. including regional collaboration around these decisions. And so one of the things that the Boulder County Consortium of Cities has done is taken up this as one of their items for consideration. So you're going to hear 3 presentations tonight, one from Councilmember Folkert, right? Okay, very good. Make sure I said that right. Who's representing the Consortium of Cities. You'll also hear from, let me make sure I get this right, the members of the Boulder Area Labor Council, who will present some information as well. And then also Scott Cook from the Longmont Chamber of Commerce has been invited to also speak on this topic. So we'll go ahead and start with Councilmember Folkert.
Thank you, Mayor Peck and members of council, for allowing us the time to speak with you this evening and also find out about that wonderful event that you're having on June 17th. I wanted to start with talking about why we're looking at minimum wage at the municipal and regional level and the origins of this effort. So in 2019, as was mentioned, the state legislature passed basically allowed local governments to set up their own minimum wages. Later that year, the consortium began discussions on this topic, but were interrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. 4 years later, we have some new council members on all of our councils, and the pandemic is now endemic, and there have been numerous impacts on our economy, such as sharp increases in inflation, interest rates, and the cost of living in general. Wages in our community haven't kept up with cost of living increases, and these differences are becoming much more challenging for our community members across the Front Range to overcome. Our food banks are feeding more families than ever, and assistance programs are running low on funds faster than anticipated. In 2022, the minimum wage working group formed to look at this issue collectively because we recognize that changing the minimum wage in any community changes the regional economy. Many people live in different communities than where they work. Businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations have operations and customers throughout the county. And for these reasons and others, we believe a regional approach to considering a minimum wage would be best for understanding and meeting the needs of our unique and independent economies, while also providing consistency for employees and employers who may participate in multiple communities. Over the last year, the working group has met to examine the enabling state legislation, understand the required process, and conduct early engagement with cities and stakeholders to begin sort of the preliminary assessments and needs of and interest in our communities. These conversations have established the foundation necessary to explore this joint effort. And tonight, we are not proposing recommendations or asking for a final decision on a target timeline or wage. However, we are at a point where working group members need to update and invite our councils to weigh in on next steps. Tonight, we are checking in with you for your support and for continued collaboration on the working group. On May 25th, the Boulder City Council received an update similar to the one you're about to hear, and our council supported continuing participation through the working group and pursuing next steps, which included scoping, community engagement, and an analysis of needs. The support for a regional approach was echoed unanimously from our council, and they were united in the need for meaningful and inclusive engagement. There were several concerns about a 2024 implementation and that being enough time for the engagement and decision-making needs. I mention this not to sway your feedback in any direction, but to provide transparency for where my own council is at. Understanding where communities are willing to partner and the next steps will inform the scoping for community engagement and financial analysis. As we've mentioned, moving forward doesn't commit a community to any particular outcome. There are still lots of decisions to make before we get to a wage rate and an implementation schedule. And at any point, a community may exit if they find the proposed scope, process, or resulting outcomes don't align with their needs or goals. but I hope that you will continue to partner with us in this effort. Boulder and Longmont are essentially tied for the largest municipalities in Boulder County, and together, almost 2/3 of Boulder County residents live within our municipalities. By working on a minimum wage collaboratively, we can establish a wage that provides many benefits while also avoiding some of the potential downsides. And with that, I would like to introduce Taylor Reinman to go through our presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Taylor Ryman, Assistant to City Council. I've been the staff member supporting Lauren at the consortium for the last year, and I'm going to walk through a little bit about the legislation, where do the current wages fall, and just some of the discussions that we've been having at the working group for the last year to bring you all up to speed, because this is really the first time you're hearing about this. So as a couple folks have mentioned, that piece of legislation was passed in 2019, which now allowed local governments to pursue the new authority for minimum wage laws. Here's just some quick highlights from the bill. Any new minimum wage law would require engagement with the groups listed here to precede implementation. There's a cap of 10% of jurisdictions that can enact, and in addition to the regions Lauren mentioned, this 10%, of course, in its calculation, if multiple jurisdictions came in on a minimum wage together, they would only count as one in that calculation, which also makes the regional approach advantageous per the legislation. The effective date must coincide with the regular state increases on January 1st, and escalation, whether that is to a target or an annual adjustment, could only be $1.75 or 15%, whichever is higher. So within those highlights, there are some statutory limits, so sort of baked in items that any minimum wage law would have to follow. These include implementation dates and dates for escalation and adjustments, which would have to coincide with that January 1st date. Employee time and jurisdiction is covered, but traveling through is not. It does cover all workers and emancipated minors, but does not allow exemptions for things like small businesses, and the tipped wage can be $3.02 less than the adopted wage, or whatever the tip offset credit is for that year. That's just 2022's offset. The policy discretion front, so where we have a little bit more flexibility on things. In a regional approach, a lot of these items would need consensus, but things like enforcement and escalation to a target could be local decisions that we wouldn't need consensus on through an IGA. So the target wage and annual increases to reach that wage, typically escalation periods are around 3 to 5 years. After escalation, we can choose how to make annual adjustments through consensus, and this is otherwise known as indexing. Whether or not to expand the wage to cover unemancipated minors, and cities can rely on the state's existing enforcement system or create their own. This slide is just to give you an idea of where current wages fall in Colorado and communities pursuing the new authority. So for reference, Boulder, Longmont, just like Boulder, falls under the state minimum wage, which is at $13.65 an hour. Longmont, similar to Boulder, has a self-imposed workforce minimum wage, and based on a quick Google search, I believe that is at $17.42 right now. Denver was the first to pursue this new authority, and they did it rather quickly, completed the process in 3 months. This was supported by strong council engagement throughout, and they'd also done a few years of work on their own self-imposed minimum wage right before, kind of acted as a springboard to expanding that to be community-wide. About 3 weeks ago, CU campuses raised their wages across the state to $16 an hour for students and $18 an hour for their hourly employees. And Fort Collins did consider an ordinance back in May, and council voted against it because of a stronger desire to engage in a regional approach. This slide outlines possible target wage approaches, and I want to be clear that these are not recommendations from the working group. These are proposals from external groups or how other cities or other groups have done things. These may or may not be target wages that could be aligned through a regional approach, but the best path forward on a target wage is still yet to be determined. So back in April, the Colorado Center for Law and Policy proposed their guiding wage proposal. It would be $15.41 next year and an increase of 13% each year until 2028 when it reached a target of $25. There is the option of aligning with city workforce living wages, which in Boulder and Longmont at least are $17.42. We could also align with our metro and university partners who already well exceed the state minimum. Now let's talk about the working group. We have been meeting for a year and we've really gotten into the mechanics of the legislation and what it would take to do this together. The partners listed there are Boulder County. They're a bit of a smaller player in the game because any minimum wage enacted would only apply to unincorporated. And so as a community with not a ton of large workforce centers, they are a smaller player in the game, but they've played a big role in organizing and convening the different municipal partners. So we really appreciate their help there. City Boulder, of course, is pursuing next steps. Our council considered this last week and we received support. Louisville does have this on their work plan, and they are a strong partner, and then we are here with you tonight. Early engagement, we've been regularly updating the Boulder County Consortium of Cities, which not all municipalities in the consortium are part of the working group. They're two separate entities, but we've been regularly reporting back to them on just our efforts there. We've had some early engagement with stakeholders, including our own Chamber of Commerce and some labor groups. And while there is, the next presenters will, of course, share more details on their interests and their concerns around this. But what I can tell you from our early engagement is that while there is differences in how much and how quickly to raise the minimum wage, there's pretty unanimous agreement that this should be done regionally. This draft working group timeline is largely what sort of prompted us to come to our various councils to check in. What's helpful about the timeline is that it chunks out what work needs to be done to implement, and this timeline was drafted with the idea that the implementation would happen in January 1st, 2024, and so the month durations you see on top of the timeline are associated with possible implementation next year. But you know, if that were extended out by another year, we'd have, of course, more time to do things like that. What's not listed on the timeline is something like a financial analysis, which would have to happen at the same time as precede community engagement, for example. But it's just helpful for understanding what that work looks like and what the process would be. And as Lauren mentioned, committing to a process like this, there would be several off-ramps for communities to exit should decision-making proceed in a way that wouldn't align with their own community's needs. So while we've worked together to understand the mechanics of the legislation and outline the needs, get an early sense of stakeholder views, the scope has not yet been fully defined. And for Boulder, at least, the scope may include the items listed here. And this is just to give you an idea of where our heads are at as we're thinking through scope. Most notably, processes from each community will need community engagement, analysis, being equity analysis, financial analysis, and then, of course, the very fun work of drafting ordinances and agreements. This work, though, in a regional approach, could be creatively resourced with other communities taking the leads on things. You know, excuse me. Other communities could take the lead on major deliverables. You know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time if we're going out and engaging with community. There's a lot of model items that could be created, and then partnering with our university partners, or even going so far as to hire consultants for some more of that technical analysis pieces. So with that, we bring you to the questions for council. Does council wish to continue to participate in the consortium effort regarding minimum wage, or decline participation? I imagine, so this is my first time with a Longmont presentation, so I imagine you might have questions first for us, and then maybe these questions, right?
So Taylor, I was not under the assumption that we were going to make any decisions tonight. This was just educational information so that we actually can have a conversation after among council. Was that the impression that the other councilors had, that we were going to make a decision tonight? Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Yes, I believe that is what we're looking at, is to get the information tonight and then at a later point here, have that conversation. But, you know, I think that's probably best, especially when we have Councilmember Martin out of the.
That's true, she needs to be part of this.
And Mayor Peck, I don't believe that there is any need to decide particularly around the specific issue. There's all these different processes that need to take place. I think the question is, do you want us to continue with the consortium effort? But we can have that discussion after the other speakers, if you'd like.
Okay, Councilor Hidalgo Faring. Whoops. Who went on? Okay.
I went on and then off.
Oh.
Go ahead, did you have something else? Oh, well, go for
Yeah,
it.
so, no, thank you, Mayor. So Sandy actually clarified what my understanding was. And, you know, because the first part of it is going to be that community engagement and really decide whether or not this is advantageous for our community and if this is in the best interest of our local economy and businesses. So, but I agree that with Councilmember Martin out of the room, perhaps we should wait on the decision until she can be a part of the conversation.
Councilor McCoy, and I want to ask a question first. Taylor, going through this, when we talk about the minimum wage, is this age defined at all? Because I'm wondering if teenagers are included in this. When you talk about a $25 an hour job for a teenager at a drive-through restaurant or whatever, I need to think about that. I would hate for a wage to be a determination as to whether a high school student wants to continue to go to high school, or he or she feels so good about making $25 an hour that they would stay in a job. Just a thought process.
No, thank you so much, Mayor Peck. And based on the state bill, it does cover all workers and emancipated minors, but it would be up to the communities through consensus and an IGA whether or not we wanted to cover unemancipated minors.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I was, Taylor, I was going to ask something similar to that because we certainly don't, as a former career and technical teacher at Boulder Tech and Boulder Valley School District, I'm concerned about kids not pursuing certified and certificate worker experience, and so you think it's possible to have some sort of cutout for non-emancipated minors, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, and that sort of thing, if that's according to the legislation, as somebody who's kind of dived into that?
So unemancipated minors would just by default not be covered, and then we could choose to include them in our effort. That would be up to the communities. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I just don't want us to also get in a trap where we're like an Iowa or somewhere like that is now trying to figure out, because they maybe haven't done as much as they should have to address their needs for career and technical and certified employees, that we don't go down a slippery slope of trying to increase child labor or anything like that. But as the representative to the consortium of cities, I can continue to represent Longmont along with Sandy at these meetings if the council says that's what they would like me to do.
And that feedback is helpful because looking ahead, Boulder and, we're checking in with other communities on their interest in continuing to collaborate. Our ability to scope things like financial analysis and community engagement would be very much changed by other partners being willing to participate in like an RFP for financial analysis and things like that. But one of the things that we have discussed is making sure that we flag known areas of concern or interest. So unemancipated minors is one of those areas. Healthcare workers is another one, tipped workers. And so we've been thinking very preliminarily about having some focused engagement conversations about issues of concern before doing maybe broader engagement efforts. So I'll certainly take that feedback and make sure that it's included in our known issue areas of concern.
Councilor
Thank you,
Yarbrough.
Mayor. I don't want to assume anything, and thank you for, all the information. I myself, single mom, single parent, and with one income living in Colorado, it's like how you do it, right? So I'm definitely for pay wage increase, but I also want to, Counselor Hidalgo Faring, she's, was asking about the businesses. That's and I know we have more speakers, but I don't want to assume what's the vision of a regional, everyone coming together, making that decision. What is that vision? What does that look like? So I don't want to assume it should everybody be on the same page. But when you say regional, exactly what does that entail? Or do we not know yet?
I think I'll let Councilmember Folkerts ask. That feels like a council member question.
So I think right now, Taylor had a great slide that showed the communities that we're currently working with through the consortium minimum wage working group. There have also been discussions about potentially broadening it beyond those communities. I myself am open to that. It just takes, just to get to this point has been a fair amount of work. It takes a lot to coordinate with, your surrounding communities or surrounding councils. So we haven't had any communities outside of the consortium yet commit to wanting to be a part of the working group at that level, but we are absolutely open to it and interested. And I'm continuing some of those conversations with other communities. Does that answer that, or do you?
Yeah, I just want to know, what does the outcome looks like? What does it look like?
So I think ideally, it would be great if we all come to a number that we all agree on and can all sign on to an IGA with a rate increase and a target wage date. But I think that there's still benefits, even if we can't get to a spot where we all completely agree, to sharing, resources in terms of doing research on this together and to sharing some of the outreach materials and ways in which we're doing outreach. I think that there's still a lot of benefit to collaborating at this stage, even if that doesn't mean, again, ideally, it means that we all implement together, but I think that there's still benefits even if we do not.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that regional means that we all may increment at different times. Different cities may increment at different times, right? But we all can collaborate together and have a, working group together. So if we say, oh, we're going to hire the consultant, and then the next city may do something else, right? So working together is part of the regional, but it will be ideal if we all increase at the same time, the same amount. That's the hope, right?
That's the hope,
okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. I've got 3 questions, but I'm just thinking about your last exchange with Councilmember Yarbrough. It's one thing to hope for that. Should we assume that may not be the case? I would bring the assumption that as a consortium, if we're going to be in, we're in, and that we would be setting schedules and setting in terms of time frame and targets together and implementing together. That's the whole point of a regional approach. Am I not thinking about that properly?
I think the first stage is setting this community engagement and setting this schedule together. And I think that, yes, absolutely, at this point, we can begin to work on looking at that and agreeing to what that looks like. It's hard to know what conclusions different communities are going to draw from the engagement. And so I think that I don't want to assume that we all get to the same place together. And so there may be a point in which we go forward separately, but with the information that we've gathered together.
Okay, so that will be interesting if that's where this ends up.
I hope not.
Well, I just think in the interest of the business community and employers, a regional approach makes sense. That if that breaks down, I think there are huge implications for small business, Main Street businesses in every one of these communities. And so I just think that has to be the intent or the goal if we're moving forward. Superior and Lafayette, has anybody approached them? They simply haven't been approached in terms of the other municipalities. Lyons is not a huge municipality, but obviously they're in Boulder County in terms of the L-towns. And is there some intent, based on what I understand the complexities and the challenge and the moving parts, is there some expectation we should see them in or out?
I've had conversations with members from Superior and Broomfield and Lafayette. There have been members who have expressed interest, but this hasn't yet been put on the work plan for any of those communities. I think that, as we move forward and gain momentum, there might be more interest from those communities. But at this point, they haven't sort of signed on to the working group.
So there'd be a preference for them to be involved as opposed to be excluded.
Absolutely.
Right. That was really what I was curious about. Are the implications from your perspective, and I know that you're in early conversations, are the implications for electeds and a small handful of key staff members? Or what are the implications for city managers, HR departments, directors in the municipalities?
So our first sort of initial ask of the working group was an assigned council member to represent the council, and then also a staff member to partner in this effort. Taylor could maybe speak a little bit more to what we're sort of looking at in Boulder. I think there isn't a rule in terms of what a community needs to provide. Again, I think especially with all of us partnering on this, we can spread some of the workload out and do things collaboratively. So it might also be a conversation of what capacity different communities have.
Yeah, I heard, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You're going to parse the work, and then hopefully the deliverables would be satisfying or could be tweaked to meet the expectations. As I think about the scope of work already on the plate, I don't think this is insignificant. So there are implications for the other things that are on an agenda, right? We're going to take on a new big deal, new big initiative. We need to have a conversation about what goes lower on a list if this becomes higher on the list than other things that are already on the list, that's all. My last question would be on the timeline that we saw from Taylor. I saw 10 months with a January 1 start. I assume that's a hypothetical, and maybe it looks like 2024, and you get far enough with the discussions that in February you're starting, so you're implementing in 2025 in January? Is that, because that, obviously where we are in the year right now, that 10-year or 10-month timeline gets us to next March or April, not January.
Yes, I think that, so the law only allows implementation on the first of the year. So we had made that time frame sort of, it's also a little bit hopeful, I think, in terms of getting that all done pretty quickly, with trying to show if it was even possible to do this by the end of this year. I would say that given the nature of coordinating together a large number of communities, I think it's still, even if we're looking at a implementation that's farther out, it's important to kind of keep the momentum going and to try and focus on getting as far as we can earlier so that we're not kind of hitting that pinch point next year.
Thanks for your presentation tonight. Thanks for your work on this. It is going to require a lot of leadership. Thanks for providing it.
Thank you all.
One more from Councillor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Beck. I'll be very, very brief. I just wanted to address a couple of things. I came on to this, I've maybe been at 3, maybe 4 consortium meetings. It was not clear to me. So when Mark Rusin from Boulder County, representing the county commissioners, described that it looked more like an ordinance, and I was like, oh, I'm not certain. So then I sent an email back to him and to Taylor and to the mayor and to Scott Cook, because I wanted to get the engagement of our businesses to have some sort of input on this right away, because the way it sounded was like it was starting to roll, and I didn't want anybody to get left behind or left out, or all of a sudden start having conversations without those folks in there. So I hope that helps some folks understand. And so, that was my intent, and I think that's kind of where this process of Lauren coming forward and Taylor and other folks. So hopefully we get some things kind of cleared up so that everybody knows what's exactly going on.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you all.
Mayor Peck, our next speaker was supposed to be Jeff Cahoon, but he was unable to make it today. So there are other members of the Boulder Area Labor Council who are going to present on his behalf. One thing I did just want to mention to Councilmember Yarborough's question about regionalism, the law itself says that prior to enacting a minimum wage law, the local government is required to consult with surrounding local governments and stakeholders. So that's part of the requirement, is to make sure that people are speaking, because I think there's an understanding that changing a minimum wage in one area certainly affects those around it. So that's part of the law requirement. So
thanks for that clarification.
I'll get your presentation going.
I'll clarify it.
Can I ask who is presenting here?
Hi, I'm Kathy Partridge, and I'm presenting on behalf of the Boulder Area Labor Coalition Council, as well as other members of the Boulder County Self-Sufficiency Wage Coalition. Should I go ahead?
Sure.
Great. It's good to be here. Hi, y'all. As I said, my name is Kathy Partridge. I'm a member of Together Colorado, a statewide, multi-faith, multi-race organization, and I'm a resident of Longmont. The Boulder County Self-Sufficiency Wage Coalition is a group of nonprofit, labor, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, and policy experts who are fighting for a minimum wage increase throughout Boulder County. We believe that every worker, regardless of where they come from or what they look like, deserves a living wage that allows them to support themselves and their families. Tonight, we'd like to see the City of Longmont make a commitment to investing more time and resources to explore a local minimum wage. We'd like to see Longmont work with other local governments in Boulder County through the consortium of cities so that a local wage can be adopted here in Longmont. Ultimately, our coalition would like to see the City of Longmont and other local governments in the county pass this wage so it can be implemented in 2024. During this presentation, you'll hear from some members of our coalition, and we have some folks on deck to answer questions. So to kick off, I'd like to just share some information. As you know, a state law passed in 2019 allowed local governments to set a local minimum wage that exceeds the state minimum wage, which is currently $13.65 an hour. This gives local governments the ability to adjust the minimum wage effectively to address local costs of living, to create a wage that best matches the area's housing and living costs. According to your website, City Council's vision for the people of Boulder is one where, quote, all people have access to food, shelter, and the opportunity to thrive and feel they belong, unquote. Longmont City Council and other local governments in the county have the abilities to support working people and working families by increasing the minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage can get Longmont closer to this vision. Raising the minimum wage can help Longmont be a place where folks can support themselves, their families, and support the local economy, including our businesses. We'd like to thank you for beginning to engage in the mandatory stakeholder process to bring important community voices and stakeholders, including our coalition, together. We hope to see continued engagement from local elected officials in Longmont. As a coalition, through the stakeholder process, our goal is to work together with Longmont, Boulder County, and the other municipalities to figure out what's possible while prioritizing the needs of working families. Eric?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Cornell. I'm a union representative for United Food and Commercial Workers, Local Number 7. We represent workers across Boulder County and right here in Longmont. The workers we represent are struggling to keep up with the demands of essentials like housing, child care, and food. The statewide minimum wage of $13.65 fails to match the reality behind living and working in a high-cost living area like Longmont. Working families are reeling from the highest cost of inflation that Colorado has seen in decades. Right now, this council has the ability to take action and work to pass a minimum wage that can support workers to live and thrive here. This is an issue supported by voters. Colorado voters overwhelmingly supported raising the minimum wage. In 2016, 71% of voters in Boulder County voted in support of raising the statewide minimum wage. Additionally, recent polling came out showing that voters believe that the average worker needs to earn at least $26 an hour to have a decent quality of life, and voters strongly support raising the minimum wage to $20 an hour right now. We want our community to be known as a place where working hard provides a path to a better life for your family instead of a place where long hours of hard work barely provide enough to get by. Our coalition shares City Council's vision where all people have access to food, shelter, and the opportunity to thrive and feel they belong. Increasing the minimum wage supports working people and families who are currently facing heightened economic insecurity and uncertainty, which is pushing them away from jobs and opportunities to live right here. Raising the minimum wage isn't just beneficial to workers, it's good for the economy and businesses. Right now, in communities like Longmont, workers cannot afford to live or work where the employers need them most, and businesses cannot find enough staff to operate at full capacity. When workers have stable income, they are less likely to switch jobs frequently, which saves businesses time and resources associated with recruiting and training new employees. Better paid employees tend to be more motivated, leading to higher productivity and better job performance. Additionally, higher wages increase consumer spending, stimulating economic growth. This is especially true for working families who are more likely to spend disposable income on goods and services than high-wealth households. Putting more money into working families' pockets is one of the quickest ways to increase demand, spurring economic growth that allows businesses to expand and hire more workers, not less. Raising the minimum wage supports families meet their basic needs, allowing people from all backgrounds to live and thrive in the communities where they work. Ultimately, we'd like to see the City of Longmont pass a local minimum wage that supports working people and working families. But tonight we're asking this council to make a commitment to explore a local minimum wage in Longmont. We aren't asking this council to raise the minimum wage overnight. Actually, there are limitations in the state law allowing for the gradual phase-in of this wage. This is why this issue is an urgent one. The sooner it gets off the ground, the sooner Longmont can be in a place where working people and working families can be supported and live and thrive here. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Charlie Brennan. I'm the Deputy Director of Research for the Colorado Center on Law Policy. We're a statewide public policy nonprofit that's dedicated to the vision that all Coloradans have what they need to succeed. I'm going to share more information about the starting wage proposal that's presented by our coalition. And this proposal is just meant to guide the stakeholding process for your consideration. It's really a starting point for future conversations around the minimum wage. The Colorado Center on Law and Policy, in conjunction and partnership with the University of Washington, publishes a report known as the Self-Sufficiency Standard for Colorado. We do this every so often, the last time being in 2022. This report serves as the backdrop for this proposal that's here before you tonight. We use the data in this report that really covers the costs facing households here in Boulder County to ensure that this self-sufficiency wage proposal gives working people the opportunity to build a good life in Boulder County and here in Longmont. This self-sufficiency wage proposal is about respecting everyone who works hard and contributes to the economy so that people of all backgrounds can make a good life for themselves in Boulder County as well as right here in Longmont. In April, our coalition introduced a starting wage proposal that would get the minimum wage here in Boulder County to $25 per hour by 2028. This proposal starts with an increase to $15.41 next year in 2024, and then gradually phasing up to that $25 per hour level. By looking at factors like family type, housing, childcare, food, and healthcare costs, this data-driven proposal looks at the real costs associated with living in Boulder County. We've shared this wage proposal for your consideration. We want to continue conversations with this council and others in Boulder County to ultimately find a wage that represents the reality behind what it takes to make ends meet. I'm available to answer any questions after we finish the presentation, but for now I want to turn it back to Kathy.
Community members across the county and in this jurisdiction are calling on local officials to implement minimum wage increases. Folks know that the state's minimum wage of $13.65 an hour has not kept up with the reality of what it takes to make ends meet. I want to say that again. Folks know that this wage does not keep up with what it takes to make ends meet. Those are our folks. As the cost of living grows, constituents want real solutions to address this crisis. City Council has the tools and the ability to raise the minimum wage. Our coalition would like to see Longmont make the commitment to invest more time and resources in exploring what this could look like for our city. That would include engaging stakeholders and working with other local governments and Boulder County in figuring out what's possible so that a minimum wage increase can be implemented as soon as possible. Thank you again for your time today. We're looking forward to follow-up conversations.
Thank you, Kathy. Are there any questions for this group, the coalition? Councilor Waters.
Yeah, for someone in this group, just describe the relationship between the Labor Council Working Group and the coalition, the Consortium of Cities Task Force.
Hi, everybody. My name is Morgan Royal, and I am speaking tonight representing the Boulder Area Labor Council as well as the coalition. And that's a really great question, Council Member Waters. So to start off, I will just say, to us, we see a lot of shared overlap with the consortium of cities. First and foremost, in the desire to begin to bring community voices and important stakeholders like our coalition to the table. As you saw, our coalition is made up of many of the required stakeholders, including nonprofits, community organizations, workers, and labor organizations as well, that the 2019 law mandates local governments to engage when exploring this policy. Our understanding is that through the consortium of cities, the county plans to facilitate spaces for stakeholders to engage. And our coalition was formed with the intention of participating in those stakeholder spaces. And as a coalition, we're aligned in our advocacy to push for a minimum wage increase sooner rather than later. And then I would say second, similar to the consortium of cities, our coalition has a shared commitment to investing substantial time, resources, and energy to this issue. As mentioned in this presentation, this issue is an urgent one for us. Within our coalition, several of the organizations that we represent have membership and workers that they represent in Longmont. And it's very clear to us that this is an issue that needs to get off the ground sooner rather than later. So we plan to continue to advocate for local minimum wages, not just here in Longmont, but across the county. And ultimately, we believe that the consortium of cities can be a cross-county convening body where stakeholders and local governments can engage. We hope to see that, things can get moving, and our coalition plans to engage in those spaces as a stakeholder, and we hope that other stakeholders will engage as well. And that's why we've shared our starting wage proposal and are here tonight. Because ultimately we hope to continue this conversation.
So, Morgan, this may or may not be for you to respond to, because that same question I would ask of the consortium of cities in the working group or the task force. Will councils, at least those of those municipalities that lean into this, should they assume they're working with two different task forces, two different working groups, or one?
Yeah, to answer that, I would say that our coalition represents advocates who are fighting for minimum wage increases. The consortium process is really to convene local governments within the county to engage on this issue, as mentioned earlier tonight through the presentation you heard. And so I would say those are two separate bodies. One is a county facilitated process, and for our coalition, we hope to be a part of conversations moving forward about what a minimum wage can look like across the county and in Longmont.
It may very well be that someone from the other group would like to respond as well.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, Councilmember Folkers, I just wanted to mention that the working group is really just for the governments to collaborate and for us to set forth a process of engagement and all of that entails. In that, this is a very multifaceted issue, and so there are going to be a lot of stakeholder groups. I think that many of these groups span our jurisdictions, and as they have heard about these conversations happening, they have formed together to try and help create momentum for this initiative, but that the working group is somewhat separate, but looking to have outreach and engagement with a number of stakeholders, including these groups.
So you'll understand my wondering about what we might be committing staff to if we have parallel groups working and not certain whose lead we're going to follow or what the leadership is. But before I would make a decision, and I'm supportive conceptually, I'm supportive. So my questions aren't about not thinking we don't need to do more with, I championed when we established a living wage based on the center's living wage calculation a couple years ago. But I am mindful of how many moving parts there are going to be. It would be really helpful at some point in time if somebody could put together a Venn diagram to say, here are the things we have in common. So if we give direction to staff, we can say, those are the things you want to focus on. Whatever's outside the shared interest or shared outcomes, that's noise. If we could get really focused on the things that both groups have in common, that we ought to be really focused on. But I'll be pretty reticent if we can't do that. And if you can't set an example, we've heard from both groups how important it is to work together. If you can't set an example of what that looks like and means, I'm going to have more questions.
So
Can I jump in on your conversation, because I had the same exact confusion, to be honest, when this first came up. And the way I am hearing it is that the organization, we are part of the consortium of cities. It is part of a stakeholders, elected officials, liaisons. That is who we work with. So I see the organization that just presented to us supporting the work of the consortium. They are supporters of, and we belong to the consortium of cities. So whatever the stakeholders within that consortium decides upon, and of course we're going to bring staff into it and have our own discussions, because that's the way we should work. And Councilor McCoy, as our liaison for the council, Assistant City Manager Sandy Cedar, as the liaison for staff, will bring back to us what it is the consortium is discussing and how do we fit into that if we want to. So I love the support of any organization that wants to support what the consortium is doing. And that's the way I look at it. I would take our lead from the consortium of cities, since that is who we're a part of.
And we are working to be the conveners of this discussion, I think, as opposed to this coalition, which is more of an advocacy group.
Right.
And they're looking to affect the decision that we make, but they're slightly different roles that we play.
I'll say again, thank you for the clarification. Modeling what this looks like and clarity on what the overlap is going to be helpful, at least to one council member.
Yeah, and just to be clear, our coalition, we're not elected officials.
Right.
Mayor Pack, as you explained, I think is, the perfect depiction. We also are, following along with the consortium's process, and, our coalition formed with the intention to engage, and we would like to see Longmont be a part of that.
Okay, thank you, Councilor McCoy. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. You're on.
I am on. Thank you, Mayor. So, I pulled up the bill, and, the first item on the list, prior to enacting a minimum wage law, the local government is required to consult with surrounding local governments. That I view as the consortium of cities and various stakeholders. Your group could be considered one of those stakeholder groups, as well as the chamber and the Latino chamber and other business groups that represent the businesses. So I actually have a couple of questions, and I just kind of stated that as thinking out loud. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. So, I do have a couple of questions. One being, have other cities, you named in the presentation that Denver had adopted minimum wage. Have other cities or counties, similar in size to us, have they adopted a minimum wage for their municipalities, and how is that looking for them?
Great question, and also you explained that stakeholder process per the law perfectly. And just to clarify, the debt right now in Colorado, the city and county of Denver is the only current city and county to enact a local minimum wage right here in our state, but other municipalities and counties similarly sized to Longmont have implemented these local wage policies, including Berkeley, California, for example, and Las Cruces, New Mexico. So there are other, areas within the country that have done this, but I also think, there's also a city and county right here in Colorado, in Denver, that was able to implement a policy, and they did it in 3 months while following the limitations within the state law, which include the economic analysis and stakeholder process.
Okay. And then, and I guess, have you heard any, as far as businesses suffering because of that, prices going up? Have there been any consequences in relation to the change?
Yeah, I'm actually going to pass it to Charlie with the Colorado Center on Law and Policy to answer that question.
Yeah, so in terms of impacts, costs haven't gone up too much too much in Denver. I'll say, just relative even to Boulder, Denver is still less expensive of a community to live in than Boulder County is, even after, how many years now? 4 years of implementing a higher minimum wage than the state level. And so, when we look at the data that, that we use to sort of propose the minimum wage proposal, for Boulder County, we still see in that data that costs consistently are higher in Boulder County as compared to Denver, and that's from 2022.
And then one more question. Have you heard from other communities or workers, that, just some pros and cons to this? What has been the feedback you all have received?
Great question. I think the first thing I'll say is that the way that the stakeholder process per the law is designed, it's pretty robust to include and bring many voices, including our coalition, of course, to the table to really imagine what's possible. And so, I think as a next step, what we would like to see with this council is to commit to continuing those conversations, engaging with stakeholders, including our coalition and others who need to be brought in to the table to engage here. And, our coalition represents, we have over 30 organizations within our coalition, with many organizations working with community members and workers right here in Longmont. And so I'm actually going to pass it to Eric from UFCW Local 7 to share what, our coalition is hearing from workers and community members right here in Longmont.
Well, this is just off the cuff, but I tell you, I talk to workers every single day. I work with grocery workers, and in our facilities, they make more than the state minimum wage to start with. A courtesy clerk makes more than the minimum wage, and from different governmental meetings I've been hearing, a lot of the business community, they're already paying more than the minimum wage. It obviously needs to go up. I actually think you couldn't go anywhere in Colorado and get by on minimum wage. But the workers I talk to, they're, I'd say on average making, let's just say $17.50 an hour in the stores, and they're nowhere close to making it in this community. They have to have multiple roommates. They're living beyond week to week, and I just think it's just a no-brainer to get it going. I don't think punting it down another year. I know government takes a long time to get things done. It just does by its nature. But I think the sooner it gets implemented, the better, just because it's already happening organically anyway. I think propping up a $13.65 minimum wage, really it only encourages exploitation of the people at the bottom of our society's income earning wage. I understand what you're saying about high school workers, and there's something that could be done there. But as far as the people that are out there literally trying to make a living, it obviously has to go up. I think I saw. I'll try to shut up. I can go forever. But I saw a news story that said the minimum wage peaked at like 1968. And people talk about the good old days all the time. Well, they were the good old days because people were getting by. There were a lot of social issues, but people were making it. I think that's what we need to look at.
Okay,
But
thank you. Thank you.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I just wanted to reiterate that I didn't know where people were at with this, so that's why I brought it up at the pre-session last time we met, and also emailed some stakeholders to make sure that we had that sort of connection and got the ball rolling, because I hadn't heard any of this prior to me coming on to the consortium of cities as a representative. So I wanted to make sure that I was representing you guys in the correct way, in the way that to many of the points that Councilmember Waters and some of the questions that he asked, I want to make sure that you know, we're not proceeding without direction, and that I'm representing you guys in the way that you'd want to see in regards to how we participate here. So that's my hope and that's my interest here. And,
Okay.
So I want to make that clear.
So let's have the last presentation, and then we can all go one by one and ask if you want to stick with the consortium and stay with the process.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Thanks, Mayor. So as part of this process, I think we reached out to Scott Cook from the Longmont Chamber of Commerce, just kind of laying out that, hey, this process is beginning, and I believe that you asked for him to come and kind of speak from where the Longmont Chamber is at this point in the game. So here he is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, and good evening, Mayor Peck and members of City Council. And also thank you to Councilmember Folkert and Taylor and the other speakers that spoke as well. I am Scott Cook with the Longmont Chamber. Our business owners are acutely aware of cost of living increases in our county and our region. The same reasons given tonight for why employees need higher wages are many of the same reasons business owners are struggling to raise wages. Rising rent, property tax, insurance, healthcare, and more. In addition, business owners have a cost of goods increases, inventory pressures, and in the past few years, a growing list of new regulations to comply with. In the Chamber's recent business needs survey of 162 businesses responding, a majority mentioned inflation, salaries and benefits, and recruiting qualified talent as significant or very significant challenges. We are not opposed to having a conversation on wages, but believe we need to consider this current economic time, which is both volatile nationally and regionally. We do not know whether some of our businesses will survive the current economic difficulties. We have all seen, as was mentioned also tonight, the many help wanted signs at many businesses around the community. There is tremendous market pressure to raise wages. However, there is a limit that a business owner has, and it is more and more impacted by the reasons that I've stated already. One small business owner that I spoke with said that I can pay my employees up to a certain amount an hour. It's a stretch for me, but it's as far as I can go, and it's what I'm doing. Other businesses around me are paying more for entry-level positions. However, my clientele is very price conscious, so I have to be slow to raise prices. I must also deal with other rising costs and inventory concerns. I take care of my employees the best that I can, but I can only do so much. In today's Times Call article, speaking about this meeting tonight, it was said that because there's a 5-year ramp up, it will take some time before it even starts affecting businesses. But I would ask that we consider this business owners and others like them. They are already being impacted, and any increase next year or in future years will be felt immediately. I mentioned before that we are not opposed to having a conversation on wages, and we are not, as it is a top concern for many of our employers. However, we at the Chamber believe we need to be very cautious. This is a sensitive subject, now more than ever, and we expect that just the mention of a minimum wage conversation will deter business relocation and expansion in our area. But by having these conversations, we suggest discussion on long-term solutions that will benefit the whole community. Conversations need to include how we together will address the host of pressures business owners have that are keeping them from raising the wages. This would include having a discussion on the pipeline, beginning with those entering the entry-level jobs and then being able to move up successfully to higher earning positions. Our educational resources here are excellent at preparing students to enter the workforce and then being able to move up. Front Range Community College Center, for example, the Center for Integrated Manufacturing, is an amazing resource for students looking to secure jobs making far more than the current or proposed minimum wage. We suggest livable wage conversations include how we promote these options and further reduce any barriers for potential students to take advantage of these options. Our business owners do want to seek solutions to our current cost of living crisis, but we ask that those solutions be a cost that, and a concern that is shared across the community, is good for the long term, and not overly burdensome to just one segment of the economy, of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Do we have any questions for or discussion for Scott? Thank you very much. So now we're just going to go down the line, and I'm going to let me know if you want to stick with this conversation with the consortium of cities and continue to be engaged. So I'll start with Councilor Waters. We're miking up.
Yeah, I think we ought to lean into this conversation. So the clearer we can become in terms of what are all the advocacy groups and how does that fall into behind the leadership or with, in collaboration with the consortium, I think the more, the easier or the farther in, the harder in that I would lean. Okay. But I also want to hear from staff as we, before we get too much further into this, so that I want to be really clear. If we are adding something that is going to require substantial time, that we also talk about what goes lower on the list, and we simply acknowledge there are some things that we might have done this year that we won't because this became a higher priority. So wherever we end up in that conversation, that has to be part of it for me.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I think to do nothing is equivalent to sticking one's head in the sand, so to speak. And I'm a big proponent of analysis. I think that's the big thing that we need to address, and I therefore think going forward with the consortium as a partner in helping defray and spread the costs among the various, at least governmental entities, is probably the prudent way to deal with at least the cost of the analysis that needs to be done. Because I think it would be interesting, not just for the sake of knowledge, but also when making the decision to see specifically how the different communities, local economies are in, how they react to one another as far as, say, a potential wage increase goes, where discrepancies are based on our current wages between city to city in what's proposed as the regional coalition. So I'm in favor of moving forward as far as the coalition with the consortium is concerned.
Councilor Hidalgo-Ferry.
Thank you. I too am supportive of moving forward with the consortium of cities, as well as, really having that robust community engagement. As Mr. Cook had pointed out around looking at long-term solutions. I also want to, I want to see what we, hopefully this working group or this community engagement process, we'd be able to come up with solutions that could offset so that we can increase that livable wage while still supporting our businesses. So, I'm looking forward to that, what ideas spawn from the engagement process.
Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I too am supportive of that, but I wanted to hear from Scott Cook. I wanted to hear from the chamber. I want to hear from other, the Latino Chamber of Commerce and other small businesses as well. And I've said this at the Consortium of Cities. I didn't know, they were talking about an ordinance. I didn't know if that would fly. I didn't know if the next thing about us putting something on the ballot would fly, or having them pursue a ballot initiative would be the best way to go. But something has to move, and we have to get the community engaged and the stakeholders, and it's really critical. And I like what Mr. Cook brought up in regards to engaging Front Range Community College and making sure that more people are knowledgeable about the resources there. So I think that's another stakeholder that needs to be a participant in this discussion.
Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Definitely, I want to make sure that we have the right stakeholders at the table, and when we do this when we have community engagement, making sure the right people are at the table, are in the room, like our business owners have to be in the room. They have to be in the room because it affects the entire community. Yes, I'm all for wage increase. I know what it's like working 2 jobs overnight and then getting up, have an hour in between and go to my second job. I know what it's like just to live here. So I'm not against it, and I think we should move forward, but now that I know it's regionalism, is engaging stakeholders, making sure we have the right stakeholders at the table, because if our businesses leave, then the employees are gonna leave. We have to remember how we all can survive and how we all can thrive. And so they have to be at the table to tell you what their needs are too. And so I definitely believe that we should move forward, but making sure that what the process is and who all is involved in who is doing what job, because, you know, the collaboration, you know, who's paying for, you know, who's putting out the RFP, who's doing the community engagement, what are our city employees, as you know, Councilmember Waters were mentioning, who's doing what. And I think that's very important so that no one get left behind, because it's easy to get people to get left behind when we're talking about trying to be regional. There are too many pieces in too many cities. We're talking about all of us as counselors agreeing on one thing, and you're talking about cities agreeing on the same thing. So just making sure there's organization in it and making sure who needs to be at the table. All the chambers should be at the table. All the businesses within those communities that want to participate should be at the table. All single parents that want to participate should be at the table. So I believe we should move forward, but with organization and understanding who is doing what. Thank you.
So I agree with everybody. And to just expound a little bit on what Councilor Yarbrough said, when we go to the table at Consortium of Cities, we go with what Longmont needs. We go with what we are doing, not what the county as a whole thinks is good for us. So this is very important to me, that when we bring in our small businesses, our local businesses, our primary employers, all of them, how does it affect all of them? Just watching the businesses through COVID and coming out of COVID, it's been very, very difficult for them to just keep the lights on. And we have to be able to get their input always, so that when Sean and Sandy go to those meetings, they go representing Longmont. So I just want to put that in there. So yes, I think we should move forward. Harold, did you want to say something?
I just want to make sure what I am hearing is also we need to do an evaluation of the amount of work that we have, put that into the parameters
Absolutely.
of what we have on the work plan. The other thing I would say is our proximity is a little bit different. And I would say one of the things that as staff we're going to be looking at too is our proximity to Southwest Weld County.
Yes.
Because, you know, we overlap. And we are seeing other businesses locating in that area. And so I just wanted to bring that out because we've been focusing on Boulder County, but we're on both counties, and we're really similar to Erie in that position in terms of how we're working. So I just wanted to throw that out to council to know it's on our radar, but we wanted you all to hear that piece too because of proximity.
Which is exactly why we need to work with staff and not have this just be, whenever I hear stakeholders, it's just the elected officials, but for me, it is not. It is staff. We work together, so that input is really important. Okay, so I think we're going to work with the consortium to move forward on it. Thank you, everybody who presented. So now we are at first call, public invited to be heard. I do have something I want to say about this process, though. I am going to change it up a bit on first call, public invited to be heard, and this is per our rules of procedure. Longmont's council represents, according to our rules of procedure, first call, public invited to be heard, is for Longmont citizens and city employees. So the way I want to do this going forward, and we will try it, we don't have that many people here tonight, but perhaps next week, is that we want to hear from the people who live in Longmont, who we represent first. So if there is anybody on my list that does not live in Longmont, or that we can't verify with an address that they live in Longmont, they will have the opportunity to speak, but it will be at the final public invited to be heard, because our job up here is to do the business of the city, and which is why we had this presentation, and I know it was long, but we, doing business of the city, need to hear that first and foremost. So anybody that is coming outside of our city that wants to speak at public invited to be heard, if it interferes with us being able to have the time to do business with our city, if you do not live here, you can express your opinions at the final call, public invited to be heard. So knowing that, and the other thing is that the people who are here to speak, if they want to speak on something on our agenda, they should go first, so that they are addressing what we are, the business of the city is at this meeting. So I just want to put that out there so that we can all know how our meetings are going to be run. So the first one on, yes.
I think I understand what I just heard. So somebody who is a Longmont resident who comes to speak, are they required or not to give their address?
If I don't know from this list that they are a city resident, and that's the only way I would know is their address, then they can talk, but it would be at the final public invited to be heard.
So Longmont residents no longer, so for example, the students we've heard from.
And yeah, we're going to discuss that at a different portion of the agenda. Harold and Sandy and I have talked about that and how would we make that work.
How would we make that work?
As far as, well, right now, at this point, I don't want to discuss that. I'm just talking.
You're creating new rules and procedures. I mean, I've got the rules and procedures here.
Me too.
And there's nothing in the rules and procedures that says people are required to give an address. Now, I understand what you just said, that I wouldn't know what the address is unless I
wouldn't know if they were a resident of Longmont.
I got that. So the question, I'm still asking the question, because there's nothing in our rules and procedures. And I'll appeal the ruling of the chair and ask for a parliamentary interpretation if need be. But the rules and procedures do not stipulate, nor does the charter, that somebody who comes to the dais to speak to the council is required to give their address.
No, it doesn't, but it does say the first call is for Longmont citizens and city employees. They get the first call, public invited to be heard. A Longmont citizen has to tell us that they are a resident. How would they do that?
Well, they would put down their Longmont resident on the sign-up sheet. They would state, I'm a Longmont resident. And they would come and they would state that they're a Longmont resident, because they do not wish to expose themselves to whatever, to forego or give up that right to privacy. I'm a resident, I have the right to come here and speak to the council, but there's nothing that stipulates that I have to state my address.
Well, I did have counsel from legal as well as the city manager on this. This wasn't something that I just came up with. Someone from Lafayette could come up here and say, I'm a Longmont resident, and put it down.
Well, somebody could give any address.
Well, exactly.
So it doesn't, what we're doing is putting people in a position potentially to put something down, whether it's true or not. And that's some of what, in the correspondence we've had about this issue, some of the signals are kind of mixed. Like, I'd rather have something stated in Longmont than the actual address, right?
Eugene, would you weigh in on this a little bit with what our discussion was?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So I was looking at Charter 3.9. I had actually not recognized before, but with regard to city council meetings, it says all regular and special meetings of the council shall be open to the public, and citizens and employees shall have a reasonable opportunity to be heard. I think a reasonable interpretation of that is Longmont citizens and employees shall have a reasonable opportunity to be heard. We did not discuss any verification procedure. I think, something like this, enforcement is problematic. And I think there's a variety of ways to approach limiting first call to citizens, employees. I think we, per our charter, can exclude non-citizens and employees of Longmont.
Non-residents.
Yeah.
Citizens suggests to me something quite different.
I'm just quoting the language from the
Yeah,
charter
I know you are.
and interpreting it to mean residents of the city. But I'll stick with the language of the charter, and how we implement is a joint challenge that council and staff can figure out what the best way to do that is.
Well, I think we ought to be really clear with people who come to speak to council what the requirement is. And if I don't think we have the latitude to simply make up new rules without a vote of the council in terms of council rules and procedures, and it would be a vote of the public, right, to change the charter. So we were inconsistent in the public forum. And I just think we ought to be consistent with and I just want to know what the expectation is.
The expectation is to make sure that we hear what our public in Longmont, the city of Longmont, want their elected officials to hear. We spend a lot of time at this council listening to people from Lafayette, from Denver, from...
I'm down with that.
And the only
I agree
way,
with you.
I'm sorry, but the only way that I know of is to have them put down their address. If they lie, that's not on us.
So the new
But
rule,
most people do not.
so the new, well, I agree with that. The new rule going forward is that people have to give us their address of residence if they're going to speak to us.
At first call, public invited to be heard. They do have free speech, so they can talk at the final call, public invited to be heard.
Okay, just so.
For example, we have on this list someone that put down, I'm a member of the public. That could be Michigan. And we have someone here who says they live in unincorporated Boulder County. What city? Did they vote for us? So that is my concern, is that for the almost 8 years I've been on this council, we have spent hours listening to people who do not live here. And so that is just my opinion, and I would like to move on right now to public invited to be heard. We can discuss this at a
Well,
at a
it's
different
more than an
point.
opinion. You're changing the rules. So it's more than an opinion. And I'm not certain by what authority does the mayor get to change the rules without a vote of the council?
I thought with my discussion that I had the right to do that. Am I overstepping?
Mayor and council, council rules of procedure, Rule 5, the Longmont Charter 3.9 guarantees citizens and employees a reasonable opportunity to be heard. And so
It didn't say when at that meeting.
at each regular and special city council meeting. So I think that the rules of procedure just
They're pretty general.
adopt the language from the charter. And if we're restricting the right for non-residents at public invited to be heard, I think that's within the confines of the charter. It says the only people that have a right to be heard at public invited to be heard are Longmont residents and employees.
Well, that's not what it says. I've read the charter too. It's not what it says. It says citizens.
Right, and I have interpreted that to be residents as you were suggesting.
Okay.
And I brought that up with Eugene today when we discussed this. I said citizens, and he said, in this context, it's the citizens of Longmont.
Well, I hope the citizens of Longmont are paying attention. Thank you.
So, wasn't that fun? The first one on our list? Oh, all right. Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, I agree with what you're saying, but I do also, I'm trying to make sure I say it correctly, and it probably won't, but I do want to make sure that we give an amount of notice, and in the charter, it doesn't matter if we give a notice if we decide to. And I know we probably, since we haven't been doing it, I think it is kind of like we should give the community a heads up, like next Tuesday, if you're not, these are the rules. It is kind of like at the last minute. And I agree with you. We do spend a lot of time listening to people, and it's freedom of speech, and we don't have a problem with that. But when we have our own people that's here that want to address an issue that's on the agenda, and they leave because they don't get the opportunity because they have to go in this life, we know that. I do agree with what you're saying, but I also agree with fair notice too. I think we should give at least a week notice. I don't know if it says in the charter if we change. We're not really changing compared to, considering what you said, the charter says that we should have been doing it in the first place. But since our community are used to us doing that anyway, I think it's fair that we give them a notice. That's me personally. I don't know if anyone else agree with me, but.
I agree, and that's why I said next Tuesday.
Okay.
But that probably isn't enough notice anyway. And I do know that when Mayor Pernak was here, she did that. So this is not unusual for this city to say we need to hear from our residents first, and if possible, whatever's on this agenda, not on what the state's doing, what the school district's doing, but what's on our city agenda. I'm not going that far. I'm just saying we need to hear from our residents first. So Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. And I absolutely think that we should hear from our residents first, and we should have some sort of verification that, yeah, they're a resident, and if they lie, that's on them. As far as students coming before us here, when they've been given a school assignment, and this is something that is associated with their grade, and and the school has felt that this is one of the curriculum requirements that they need to address. I'm fine with those students in that isolated situation, a very specific, very isolated, giving the school's address because they are minors in most cases and it is a school assignment, not because I think that we want to make an exception for everyone, but I also think that in that isolated situation, we have to take that into account, and that's reasonable and prudent.
Thank you, everyone. So we will discuss this more, but here is the heads up that we are from this point, from my position, we are going to be hearing from residents who live in our city first. Anyone who wants to comment to our city council, but they do not live here, still can on final public invited to be heard. So with that, I am going to call on Michelle Bennett, I'm sorry. 3 minutes.
name is Michelle Bennett, and I am a 50-year person who has lived here for 50 years, Longmont, Colorado. Thank you very much. Oh my goodness. Right now I'm a little disappointed. So this evening I am here to discuss a public notice that I got, hearing about the Bond Farm plan and whatnot. And it invites our neighborhood to be present and speak at this public hearing with the developer. And so there's the one side that everybody can see and you can read it. But we're supposed to go to this meeting being well informed, and this is the information that we're given. I can't read this information. I'd like to circulate this, please. I was told I could do that so that people can see what I'm talking about. I will not be informed by this sheet of paper at this meeting. So I'll begin now. Good evening, Mayor Peck and council members. I'm here this evening to discuss the recent notice public hearing in the context of the Bond Farm proposed development. I can read the front page, but not the back page, nor can anyone else I have talked to. I'm fairly certain you would not be able to read it as well. I would conclude that this letter should be voided immediately and redrawn so that the recipients and the decision makers can be adequately informed before they attend this meeting. Without this information, we cannot, in all fairness, participate in this timely legal matter. Unless, of course, the planning, zoning, city manager, and council members count on a certain amount of apathy. I would ask the council to support effort of voiding the document and also aid in expediting this process of creating a legitimate one that actually informs this neighborhood of what's going on. Addendum. I would also like to suggest any Longmont citizen that cannot read these communications from the city sent to them by the city of Longmont, please speak out. And I am very concerned that the city does not translate this information because we are excluding a large amount of the population. I've lived here for 50 years. I've been an ESL adult education teacher, and I am so saddened that this stuff, especially these kinds of letters, the man who lives adjacent to this property cannot interpret this letter. He has to have some adjacent. He lives adjacent to this property, right there. Cannot read this letter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Do you want to give that to Harold? Thank you.
Good evening.
Stephen Altschuler.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Altschuler. I live on Taylor Drive. I've lived in Longmont for 16 years and Boulder County for 26. Boulder County, not Boulder. So I'd written out all kinds of stuff that I was going to talk about tonight, but I think I'm going to make my comments a little more current and talk about the minimum wage. Okay. And I know none of you can respond, but I thought I'd give you a citizen's input. My gut feeling is it's probably not a bad thing to raise the minimum wage somewhat. One of my thoughts when they had the chart there was maybe the first year you jump from $13.72 and you add up $1.35 or 75 or whatever it was, and then after that go up with the rate of inflation. But going up the 12.75 or 12.95% every year for 5 years is very extreme. It works out to almost 100% increase in 5 years because you're compounding it on the rate that you've already raised it. So it's an extreme amount. Businesses will either have to close, they'll have to lay people off, which will obviously affect the unemployment and the homeless in Longmont and everything else. Another point I was going to make, in my opinion, minimum wage was never intended to provide a living wage for a family of 4. It was made for teenagers, basically, to get into the workforce and start working and get some work experience. If you want to do something that's included in the minimum wage, and this is my philosophy in general, don't just give, give, give. If you're going to help with a minimum wage, as I think Scott was talking about, but I didn't completely follow it, also incorporate it with Front Range where they're getting extra training. Nobody in the world is ever going to provide for a family of 4 on minimum wage, because the more you raise minimum wage, the more the cost of food goes up, the more the cost of food goes up, the more rent goes up. Everyone stays in the same position, you're just talking about bigger dollars. The only way anybody ever gets ahead in this world is to either work 60 hours a week and save some of that money, or get some additional education so they have more value. So I just want to make those points. I'm sure half of you would come up with that anyway, but that's my 2 cents, and hopefully it's a little bit useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Carol Pranchke? Carol, is she here? Polly Christensen.
Did you call me?
I did.
Oh, I wanted to speak when you're talking about the item 10B. This is the second hearing.
Okay, you were on this one, the first list, but that's okay.
Okay.
I'll call you later. Chris Sidoriak?
So that was a very interesting discussion. The whole thing tonight has kind of blown my brain because it's so easy to hear. I'm sorry, my name is Chris Sidoriak, and I am a resident and citizen of Longmont. It's like, who do you feel bad for? The businesses that are going to go under or the people that are going to go under? And personally, I have been a therapist and case manager at Mental Health Partners for 24 years. I'm now retired. And I saw the personal cost of financial stress all the time. And in fact, part of my job was to try to balance budgets of people who have nothing and try to make it so that they can live in a place and eat and provide for childcare. If it's impossible, it's impossible. And when people are under financial stress, it creates intense emotional distress, whether that's anxiety, whether that's depression. But either way, the person that's going through that, their brain is going a million miles an hour. How am I going to make it? What am I going to do about this that just cropped up? What about this expense? How am I going to continue to work when I can't afford childcare? And I think that employers are kind of fooling themselves when they think, well, if I raise the wage, then I'm going to go under. Because the reality is that your employees are not there 100% of the time when their brain is just trying to solve these ongoing daily crises. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? So you're going to get better productivity. You're going to get better attendance because they don't have to go out and try to figure out, okay, when am I going to be evicted? And then they're always moving, and these things take time. And I think it's also true that there's a huge segment of the population that are single mothers that cannot work because childcare is so prohibitive. So if you want to have the benefits that a person that's going through that to be able to work in your organization, you're not going to get that. And people that are mothers know a lot, and they're good at a lot because they have to be. They have to be making decisions like this. They have to be right on top of a lot of things. And so those are some of our most quality people, our mothers. I'm not sure if I have anything else to say about that. Oh, well, turnover. Yeah, turnover. Because if some other job comes up and somebody's offering a little bit more, they're going to jump ship and they're going to go with that person. So I just think that some business owners are really fooling themselves when they think that they can pay these wages that are not livable, that are not sustainable, and have a good working organization. So, thank you.
Thank you. Megan Carrier. Thank you. Jacob Waltz.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Waltz. I live and work here in Longmont. I work just on the East King Supers on 17th. Just recently, back in April, my partner and I found ourselves at the end of a lease and looking for new housing. We had been subletting from my mother and living in her basement. But when it came time to find somewhere to live, we found we simply couldn't afford to live in Longmont on our own. Our income put together couldn't make it past the mark of more than 3 times rent for any of our local apartments, despite the both of us making $19 an hour. And we faced rejection from everywhere we had applied. We thought we might have to move out of town, or go north as far as Cheyenne to find somewhere to live. It was only just by happenstance we had a coworker who was in a very similar situation, and we were able to work something out and are now roommates with them. And only with our 3 incomes put together are we able to make affordable housing work and get by. This is a situation that affects many around Boulder County, and we need a commitment to raising the minimum wage moving forwards and adopting a minimum wage that will make Longmont a place to put down roots and really be able to grow with their community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Susan Gibson. Thank you. And I am having trouble with this name. McGuire, last name McGuire? She left, okay. Yes, her address is down here, thank you. Martin Orner. Let's go back up to Lance Whitaker. Oh, Strider, I'm sorry. Strider first. It's been a while. We know Strider.
Strider Benston, been here 18 years. And in one of my other lifetimes, I was a union organizer and steward in Chicago Truck Drivers Union, Teamsters, and National Postal Mail Handlers Union. I have a song, and if you understand it, you'll know why I have not been permitted to speak or sing the last couple of years at Martin Luther King Day or Juneteenth. But as Florida and Texas are abolishing history, Longmont's doing some of that too. B.B. King said, you haven't been around long enough. Well, I got woke in 1957 when the they called the National Guard in Arkansas to stick bayonets and prevent little girls my age from going to school. So I've been woke ever since then, the last 66 years. A song for Medgar Evers written by Matthew Jones of the Freedom Singers, and I have put his picture around. He died about a year after that. That was in 2015. In Jackson, Mississippi in 1963, there lived a man who was brave. He fought for freedom all of his life, but they laid Medgar Evers in his grave. Medgar spoke words of truth for all men to hear, black and white alike for to save. But a hate-filled white man named Bandila Beckwith laid Medgar Evers in his grave. Medgar spoke words of freedom, liberty, and justice. He'd die before he'd be a slave. But a high-powered rifle tore out his heart and laid Medgar Evers in his grave. He laid Medgar Evers in his grave. Oh, I'm running out of time. Medgar. Now Medgar has some company in his heavenly home. Those little children of Birmingham, like Jesus, they died for you and for me. They died for you to be free. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Lance Whitaker.
Hello, my name is Lance Whitaker, 1750 Collier Street, Longmont, Colorado. I've been a resident for 40 years now. Today is National Drive-In Movie Day. We no longer have drive-in movies, so we don't have to worry about that. It is also National Garden Exercise Day. My girlfriend got plenty of that today, digging weeds. If any of you need that, you can provide that. It is also National Applesauce Cake Day. So everybody enjoy a piece of cake today with no sugar. You all have a good day, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Lance.
You.
Seeing no one else on the list, I'm going to close first call, public invited to be heard. Let's take a 5-minute break. Oh, okay, thanks. I think our 5 minutes are up. So we are moving on to our consent agenda and introduction and reading of titles on the first reading of ordinances. Would you mind reading our items on consent agenda into the record?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
The second reading and public hearing for ordinance on this consent agenda will be on June 20th, 2023. Item 9A is ordinance 2023-25, a bill for an ordinance amending chapter 6.08 of the Longmont Municipal Code on sales and use tax licenses. Item 9B is resolution 2023-55, a resolution amending the financial policies of the city of Longmont for 2023.
Thank you. Do any council members want to pull items from this consent agenda? Seeing none, can I have a motion?
I'll move the consent agenda items.
So the consent agenda has been moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring, seconded by Councilor McCoy. Let's vote. Oh, there we go. So can we do a voice vote? All those in favor of moving the consent agenda? Aye. All those opposed? So that passes unanimously. As we just saw. Perfect. So we're now at the ordinances on the second reading and public hearings on any matter. 10A is amend the City Council Rules of Procedure to ensure due process protections for quasi-judicial matters. Do we have any questions from council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll open a public hearing on ordinance 10A. Is there anybody in from the public that would like to address this? Strider?
I didn't know this was coming up, but I saw it, and it's like, and I see Paul Tiger is here also. We were both on the Longmont Election Commission that year, and Dan Bernard was also on it, and I heard some of the talk.
Strider, I think that you are speaking, this is about quasi-judicial matters. Are you talking about the post office box?
No, I'm just acknowledging that I have some knowledge of that being, involved. I didn't.
Okay, that's coming up. It's the next item that we're going to talk about. But that's okay, hang on. We'll bring that up in a minute.
All right.
And then I'll call on you.
Thanks.
Sure. So seeing no one from the public that wants to address 10A, I will close public hearing on this item and ask for a motion. Oh, I asked if there was any council discussion on this.
I thought you said questions.
Well, concerns, questions, discussions. Can I have a motion to move 10A?
I'll move 10A. To approve, yes.
I'll second. And now we'll open it up for discussion. 10A has been moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. I seconded it. We're opening it up for discussion. Councilor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I was just looking for the opportunity. I'm gonna vote for this. I just think this is a good way to change rules and procedures, right? And that would be my only observation, that it goes through this kind of a process if we're gonna change our rules and procedures, we get a chance to vote on it. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no other discussion, whoops, Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. You know, I've been kind of on the fence with this because I kind of feel like we're all aware of this and probably should advise people when we're talking about it. But I understand, I'll support it because I understand that some of the folks in the community don't understand that, and so we need to probably have it reiterated in a more firm way. But I don't want it to stifle that active discussion from members of the public, and so it's kind of a reluctant support. Thank you.
Seeing no other people in the queue, let's vote. That passes unanimously. 10B is 2023-23, a bill for an ordinance amending section 2.04.207 of the Longmont Fair Campaign Practices Act to remove references to post office boxes. Are there any questions from council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I open it up for public hearing on ordinance 2023-23. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this ordinance? I see that Polly Christensen has signed up. Polly?
Oh, Mayor Peck, members of council, sorry I signed up on the wrong form. Anyway, please make this.
Name and address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Pauline Christensen, 410 Judson Street,
Thank
Longmont,
you.
Colorado. Please make this simple change to restore the Longmont Fair Campaign Practices Act to its original intent of promoting trust, transparency, and uncorrupt and fair elections. When I served on council, I asked council to add the word street before address to clarify that we needed their primary voting address, not an anonymous email or post office box from which corporations and LLCs with for-profit projects coming before council were delivering multiple anonymous campaign contributions. Instead, council on a 4-3 vote by the former mayor and 3 members of who are still on council approved adding the term or post office box. This codified corruption by leaving campaign contributions open to anonymous LLCs with no information about the principals involved in the organization, as the only required listing on the Secretary of State's public database is an agent who can be a secretary, a law intern, or anyone off the street. We have repeatedly been asked, what is the problem we're trying to solve? In the last election, one candidate received 11 contributions from one post office box with 11 different LLC names. This developer, headquartered in California, owns a good deal of property in Longmont and has had and will have numerous profitable projects coming before council. The candidate could and should have rejected all but one of the contributions, but did not. This sort of thing has gone on for years and it must stop. That is the problem. I draw your attention to the online Colorado voter registration form, which I gave you. Item 3 requires name identification, and item 3 says the address where you live. It pointedly says address, no post office boxes. This is to make sure that each person gets only one vote at his or her primary address where they live. This is not an issue of privacy. This is not an issue of donor suppression, as one counselor absurdly alleged last week. It is an issue of transparency and anti-corruption. No one is required to contribute to political campaigns. If they choose to send money, it needs to be open and on the public record. This is only one small improvement of many that need to happen. And by the way, thank you all for contributing money to Juneteenth. And don't forget Betty Nanali and Madeline Strong Woodley and her sister, who worked for years to get this going too. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Polly. Anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Come on down.
I see Strider has his hand up.
Oh, okay.
Paul Tiger, Longmont, lived here 27 years. So, Longmont Fair Campaign Practices Act, my objection to P.O. Box, or what I came after was email address. And that was people were reporting email address as a location. And so my sense was what I was trying to do, where I was trying to go, is to have people put in a mailing address or a location of where they are. It's come across as Tim wanted to add P.O. Box. I've shot you guys an email and said, what about mailing address? Something that is a location that isn't an email address. Now we're past that, and we have a lot of folks that are concerned about P.O. Box. And what we had experienced here 10 years ago with Western Tradition Partnership, as we were an experiment of them, they were funding from P.O. Boxes, actually from Montana, Billings, Montana, and we've had some funding from a P.O. Box in Oakland, California. I think that it anonymizes donors. I don't think that I think that Polly just said that. People don't have to give. You can vote, but you don't have to give money. And if you give money, it shouldn't be anonymous. That's all. I think that actually if I gave money to some candidates, and I have given some money to candidates here, I'm proud of that. I want people to know that I supported them. Why would you want to hide? There's something up with that. That's what I'm asking. I don't think that P.O. Box belongs. Mailing address, something would be better. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Strider.
Strider Benston, 951 17th. I've been here 18 years. And I basically agree. I thought my thing went with the first point, quasi-judicial hearings. We had quasi-judicial hearings on that particular matter, but we were cut off because the new city council that got elected with that out-of-state money, the first order of business was to abolish the committees so that we could not complete our work. So that never actually transpired to where we could deal with it quasi-judicially. So that was the aspect I was wanting to address. But the post office box, if there is an address that goes with it, or you can pull that together, I totally agree with Paul and Polly both on that particular matter. And not only Western Tradition Partnership, but also robocalls from Virginia were coming into Longmont about who to vote for and who to vote against. So there's a lot of aspects of that that need to be at least considered. But a random anonymous post office box is dangerous for having our local city government. The same thing like getting Nextlight and living in a trailer park. You can't get it because outside people bribe local people to where we cannot get access to it, and they're getting payoffs from DirecTV and Comcast and stuff to make us pay 80 times more than other citizens to get our internet service. So thank you. This does need to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Seeing no one else from the public on this matter, I will close the public hearing. Can I have a motion for 2023-23?
Ordinance on second reading B 0-23-23, a bill to support amendment of a section for the Fair Campaigns Act, removing post office boxes.
So it's been moved by Councillor McCoy, seconded by Councillor Hidalgo Faring. I can open up for discussion. Councillor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. I'm the absurd council member, I'm sure, that was referred to a few minutes ago. However absurd my line of thinking is, I've tried to make up what I thought is a principled argument in this case. That goes to political speech and part of my concern about what we do with the rules in terms of when people come to the dais is a form of political speech. What Strider just did, what each of the people just did tonight is a form of political speech, and that's, that we encourage that. But so is donating. I would never support the idea that someone wouldn't have to offer their address to vote. But we're not talking about voting here. We're talking about participating in the political process through donations. So let me just go on the record. I'm not going to be on the ballot this fall. I'm not a candidate. So I have no interest in this personally, or in terms of my politics. But I have an idea that the principled argument is not going to prevail that I've been trying to make. So I do think there's a political dimension to this as well, and that's part of what was suggested a few minutes ago. And maybe at some point in time, some council is going to eliminate donations by anybody other than a resident of Longmont, like the Blue Flower Foundation or the Sierra Club, or groups like that aren't residents of Longmont and work with P.O. boxes. I hope that's not the case. I hope we wouldn't do that. But that might be where this is headed. There was a reference a few minutes ago, Paul talked about hiding behind a P.O. box. I think that, I made a comment last time we talked about this. I have a brother that owns UPS franchises, and about half of his clients or his customers use they call them PMBs, personal mailboxes, because their mailboxes have been vandalized. And for some of the same concerns, some of the same reasons Paul and others don't offer an address when they come up here, is fear that somebody's going to vandalize their home or, worse. And so that's, they're not hiding anything. They have the right to protect their privacy. But I understand those arguments aren't going to prevail. But if I was running this fall, I would be concerned about casting a vote to changing ordinance that potentially puts my opponents at a disadvantage a few months away from an election. So I don't see, Eugene, I don't see in this ordinance an effective implementation date.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney, correct. It would be governed by the charter. Ordinances become 10 days, effective 10 days after final publication.
So I'm going to move that we amend, I don't know if it's amending this ordinance to make the effective implementation date, if this passes, January 1st, 2024. Is that an amendment to this? Just procedurally, tell me what the correct.
Yes. If I were drafting the ordinance from scratch, I would add section 3 that says this ordinance shall be effective January 1st, 2024.
So I'm going to make that motion that it would be effective January, if it passes. Now, I'm going to vote against it, but if it passes, I think the effective date ought to be after this election cycle. So nobody who might run for a city council position is at a disadvantage because of what this city council decides to do late in this council term with the change in this ordinance. So I'm going to move the effective date being January 1st, 2024 as an amendment to this.
Is there anyone else want to discuss this? See no one else in the queue? Let's have a motion. Let's vote. I thought you said if this passes, you were going to make a motion to.
Well, I thought I needed to do it ahead of time.
My understanding, it was a motion to amend the pending motion.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So do we have a second to? Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Waters, seconded by Councillor Yarbrough to amend 2023-24. No, I'm sorry, 2023. No, wait a minute.
Yes, -23.
That's what I thought. to have the implementation date January 2024. Is there any discussion? Let's vote.
Can you roll call vote, please?
Oh, okay. All
Verbal
those in
vote.
favor of the motion, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. It does not pass. It's dead because it was 3-3. Because Marcia's not here tonight. So Counselor Waters, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez and Counselor Yarbrough voted in favor. Counselor McCoy, Counselor Hidalgo Faring, and myself, Mayor Peck, voted against. For the amendment. So it did not get amended. So now, can I have a motion to move? This was amending. No, that. Okay, yes, as written. All right, let's vote on the main motion, which is 2023-23. So that carries with myself, Counselor McCoy, Counselor Hidalgo Faring, Counselor Yarbrough voting in favor. Against is Counselor Waters and Counselor Rodriguez. Now we are on 10C, 2023-24, a bill for an ordinance amending Title II, Sections 2.04.010 and 2.04.025, and Figure 2.04.025 of the Longmont Municipal Code on election ward and precinct boundaries. Do we have any discussion or questions from council? Seeing none, I'll open up 2023-24 to the public. Do we have anyone from the public that would like to address 2023-24? Seeing no one from the public, let's have a motion. Yes?
On this, it says municipal code on election ward 4 and precinct with the number 4 and precinct boundaries. Is that correct?
I don't see that.
On the council communication,
Oh, yeah.
on the subject agenda title.
Is it ward?
That is a typo.
It's a typo on the
Yes, it is a typo on the com.
Okay, thank you for bringing that out to us, though, Counselor McCoy. I didn't see that. So it is the Longmont Municipal Code on election ward and precinct boundaries. So
I move C 0-2023-24, supporting the new boundaries.
So C-0-2023-24 has been moved by Counselor McCoy, seconded by Counselor Hidalgo Faring. All those in favor, I'm sorry, are we voting digitally? Okay, let's vote. That passes unanimously. And that is the end of our items on second reading. We have no items removed from the consent agenda. And we are now at final call, public invited to be heard. Yes. Rachel, come on down.
Hi, Rachel Moyer, 909 Parker Drive, and I'm speaking as a resident, just to clarify. Y'all were talking about the raising of the minimum wage, and Councilmember McCoy and Mayor Peck, you were mentioning that raising the minimum wage to $25 an hour for unemancipated minors might be counterintuitive to keeping them in schools and in programs for gainful employment in the future.
Yeah.
I think it might also encourage corporations that have no stake in Longmont to exploit teenage workers, because it would be cheaper for them to hire teenagers than it would people who are seeking gainful employment and trying to put bread on their table. So just wanted to throw that different perspective in there.
Good point. Thank you, Rachel. All right. So we're now at Mayor and Council. Oh, come on down.
Holly Christensen, 410 Judson Street, Longmont, Colorado. Thank you for not allowing the corruption to continue. So I wanted to say, great job on 3rd Avenue.
Yes.
It is clean, it is fast, it is, I mean, you guys did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Not too fast.
Strider.
Strider Benston, 951 17th. I've been here 18 years, and I wasn't figuring on being here all night. But as long as I'm here, let me give you Bob Dylan's version of Song for Medgar. A bullet from the back of a bush took Medgar Evers' blood. A finger fired the trigger to his name. A candle hid out in the dark. His hand sets a spark. 2 eyes took the aim behind a man's brain, but it ain't him to blame. He's only a pawn in their game. From the South politician preaches to the poor white man. You got more than the blacks, don't complain. You're better than them, you've been born with white skin, they exclaim. And the Negro is named, is used, it is plain in the politician's game as he rises to fame, and the poor white remains on the caboose of the train. But he's only a pawn in their game. The day Medgar Evers was buried from the bullet he caught, they lowered him down as a king. But when the shadowy sun sets on the one that fired the gun, you'll see by his grave on the stone that remains, carved next to his name, his epitaph plain, only a pawn in their game.
Thank you, Strider. We're now at Mayor and Council comments. Oh, Paul and Lance.
Greetings, Paul Tiger, someplace on Dixon Street. I think I came here a little while ago to talk about what's going on 3rd Avenue, 3rd and Alpine. Exactly 10 years ago, I got a petition of 460 residents around that area, and we had asked for a stoplight. What we got was a re-engineered intersection, which I do appreciate. I'm an electrical engineer, not a traffic engineer. They did a great job, and the deaths ended. We don't have death there anymore. But what didn't happen, because we didn't get across a traffic light, we didn't get a crosswalk. So the Weaver Park Industrial Park is full of jobs, and there are lots of people there, and there are people crossing back and forth. I've seen people dangling a flashlight in the early morning so they would be recognized by traffic. There are children who go over there. There used to be the Fun Center, which isn't there anymore, but I see kids on their bicycles crossing 3rd Avenue. It's 4 lanes, and what we really need, I looked in the traffic code, the handbook, the city has a handbook. There is a device which could be put there, which is flashing lights at the median. There actually places there was a cable on a light on a cable. Come on, let's do something to make it safe for people. The city traffic people have said, oh, well, they should walk down to Lashley. because that's where the crosswalk is. Oh, right, okay. So people will do that, right? No, they won't. And someone's going to get hurt. And I ask you to do something about it. Tony Umeli was a friend of mine, and he died under the wheels of a car along 3rd Avenue. Please do something.
Thank you. Lance?
Don't forget your hat.
I have 2 of them. They're circulating around town.
I only have one hat. My name's Lance Whitaker, 1750 Collier Street. I'd like to retract my statement from last week about fruit trees in parks, namely the cherry trees. I found out recently cherries don't grow very well in Longmont. But what does grow good in Longmont are peaches, apples, and plums. So maybe we can get some of those trees in. I'd like to also remind you that berries also grow very well in Colorado. So we could also supplement some of those trees maybe for berries and get, a forestry person particularly prescribing for those fruit trees and fruit bushes so that they don't get left behind other trees that are more native. Thank you, and final call.
Thank you, Lance. Seeing no one else that wants to be on the public final call, public invited to be heard, I'm going to close it. Mayor and council comments. Councilor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. It's summertime, and as a resident that lives on the northwest side of town and uses Airport Road a lot, it's getting back to that point where people are trying to do some speed exhibitions on Airport, and I want to know if there's anything that we can do about roundabouts and other things like that to slow things down, even temporary ones, to try to get people to do the right thing and not use that as an alternative to Bandmere. So we need to look at something like that. I'd appreciate it if we could get staff to take a look at what possibilities, even if temporary for a while, could work there.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to the traffic engineers. I'm not sure in that type of road that we could necessarily put roundabouts in there because of the traffic that we're moving, but we'll talk to them, and then I'll talk to Zach about what we have in terms of patrols.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else on council that would like to make a comment? I would like to say that we went to the Arapahoe reservation this weekend, and 3 of us, and it was an incredible experience. They did give us their flag, which we can add to our collection of sister city flags. It was sad, and it was hopeful. The one thing that I wanted to bring up that I learned, well, I guess we all did because we were talking in the van, is that in front of the Supreme Court, and I haven't looked at it to see if it passed or not, was the Child Care Protection Act. Welfare. That was revoked twice, and now that it's there is a group that wants to revoke it again. So it's gone to the Supreme Court, and having taken that away, the implications of that for our reservations is that it has opened up the possibility of having the babies from the Native Americans taken, and adoption agencies have been taking them for adoption. And the other thing is the trafficking of their young girls. So that was one reason why they were very, very hesitant to even engage with Longmont, and were afraid of why we wanted to be engaged with them. So we broke that barrier, and I think that's amazing. But it just saddened me that that protection for their children was taken away from them, and that they have to fight for their kids. So, but the other great thing is that they are a very happy people looking forward, vision. They really want our kids to interact with their kids so that they can understand what is off the reservation and what they have to do in order to become part of it, part of the world outside of the reservation. So I just wanted to say that and to thank the city for allowing us to go. Oh yeah, and the fry bread's really good. So, very good. So seeing no one else in the queue, I'll open it up to city manager remarks.
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City attorney?
No comments, Mayor?
Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. I'll second that. So it's been moved to adjourn. All those in favor, just say aye. Aye, we are adjourned.